To London now, and you'd be forgiven for thinking the European debt crisis had gone away. The market has been preoccupied with Japan, the oil price, Libya and the Middle East. But problems still loom large. Take Portugal, which has just thrown out its government's latest austerity measures. The country now seems to be careering towards a bailout. And speaking of ugly finances, the dust is settling on a UK budget, trying to straddle the need to slash public spending while generating economic growth. I'm joined now from London by David Buik from BGC Partners. David, the UK budget first. A good budget for the city?
Hello, Tiki. No, it was a fantastic budget. It was a fantastic budget for business, industry and commerce. Unfortunately, the Chancellor's hands were tied behind his back. Plan A, there is no reversal on that at all, I'm afraid. This budget deficit, which has got into a horrendous situation, and the borrowing requirement, though a little bit down this year, looks like it's going to be even bigger in 2012, 13 and 14, means that the Chancellor has no opportunities but to stick to his plan. However, what he's done in terms of corporation tax, creating these 21 new enterprise zones, offering rate-free periods for up to 5 years in many cases, tax breaks for smaller companies. He's changed the band for income tax, giving everybody another £600. He's really trying to stimulate. And the most important thing to me, which has only received very small print today, is the banks are obliged to increase their lending to small and medium-sized enterprises by 15% this year.
Now,
so the tools of the trade are there.
The Chancellor obviously says that this is about making Britain the financial hub in Europe, or keeping it there. But I see the Office of Budget Responsibility has it differently, and is raising, big questions about whether you can actually cut the deficit and get the growth that George Osborne is promising.
Well, you're quite right. The Office of Budget Responsibility did cut the growth for 2010 from 2.1% to 1.7%. But they're happy to say that it's going to be 2.5% in 2012 and heading up to 2.9% in 4 years' time. Now, if we do achieve those goals, and according to Robert Choate and his colleagues from the Budget of Responsibility, they believe they can be done, I think what plans are being taken at the moment are justified. You only have to look at what happened to Portugal, what's happened to Greece, what's happened to Ireland, what could happen to other European countries for allowing their budget deficits to get hopelessly out of hand.
And this lower corporations tax is actually going to be copped by the banks, isn't it, with a higher levy?
Well, I think that's right, but I think in the situation, of course, what George Osborne is trying to do is to balance political expediency and also get the money in. The fact remains that he has to placate the electorate, who are still incandescent with rage with what happened 2 years ago. And apparently there's going to have to be an education process to really try and teach people that if people think that anything else but the revitalisation of the banking sector is anything else but the umbilical cord to recovery, they delude themselves.
Well, let's move to Europe and Portugal. Now, this austerity package has been thrown out. What next for Portugal, do you think?
Well, the problem is that there isn't, again, a unanimity of thought process from the European Union of how debt should be handled. Varying degrees of thought process, whether it's Angela Merkel or others who want to, say, have a universal bond auction on behalf of all the countries. What they have to do is to have to agree something. Unfortunately, with some of these smaller economies, such as Ireland, Greece and Portugal, to ask them to make the kind of cuts in their public expenditure without devastating the infrastructure of the country, and in the same breath ask them to create growth, they're frankly too small. And they should have a complete rescheduling of their debt, be given a lot longer to repay at a much lower level, to give them half a chance of getting their show back on the road.
Do you think Portugal will accept a bailout of some sort?
Absolutely, it has to. There is no way, under any circumstances, that what Jose Socrates put on the table, which was rejected